Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Nate. I also go by Hockey Boy Nate, and today we're going to be discussing a bunch of severe weather outbreaks that are going to be occurring because, my goodness, we are at the peak of severe weather season, everyone. You guys need to stay up to date, so we have a lot of information for you here today. I tried something new by putting everything on a PowerPoint. I woke up 2 hours ago, slapped everything on a PowerPoint, and I hope this makes the video go by a whole lot quicker. So if you would do me a favor, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe, turn on notifications, share this with friends and family. Follow me on all social medias, link in the description down below, and that would be greatly appreciated. Let's get into the video here because this is pretty interesting for the most part. So you can see right here, right above my face, actually, we have our day one outlook here, a slight risk. Yes, you heard me correctly, a slight risk here for the Northeast. This slight risk includes parts of Massachusetts down into Virginia Beach. So anywhere along the coast here, you guys could potentially see some severe weather. This also includes Baltimore and Washington, Richmond, Scranton, Albany, Springfield, a little bit of Boston, a little bit of Portland. So if you guys live over there, definitely be weather aware here today. Here's our hail outlook here for today. Not that huge. It's a 5% chance of you getting 1-inch size hail or larger within a 25 miles of a point. So that extends all the way up from Maine down into North Carolina. It excludes places like West Virginia and Raleigh, Roanoke, Binghamton, Burlington and Vermont. So if you guys are a bit further south and east or even east of those areas that I just called, you guys are out of the clear, but the areas that I called before, you guys could get a small chance of hail. This is the reason why it got updated to a slight risk. The actual cold front that's moving on through with this low pressure system is really generating a lot of energy. And so, with how strong the wind shear is that's ejecting through this general vicinity, they have decided to increase the risk to a 15% chance for winds, for damaging winds, 58-mile-per-hour winds within a 25-mile radius as well. So places like Springfield, New York, Philadelphia, all the way down to Ocean City, Virginia Beach, Atlantic City, you guys are out of this, or not out of this, you're in this action. But this will be a bit more towards the latter end of the evening. So if you guys live in these areas, you guys definitely need to be weather aware. Another thing that I want to mention here real quickly, and that this is new from the Storm Prediction Center here, is that we actually have a 2% chance for tornadoes up here towards New York, northern New Jersey, into Massachusetts and Connecticut. So I know my friend Morgan will most likely want to be a human drop sonde and chase. These storms are going to be moving by really quickly. So if you guys are in a tornado warning, which I'm assuming you're probably not going to be, because for the most part, it's relatively along a line that's moving pretty linear, but you can get anything within that triple point, which is right within that area. So if you guys are ever in a tornado warning, you guys need to go ahead, just have a plan of action, know where to go, get underground, get in the lowest innermost part of your building, particularly a bathroom or a closet with no windows, so you can put as many walls between yourself and the tornadic rotation as possible. Day 2 outlook isn't anything too special. I mentioned there's going to be a lot of scattered convection here in front of the actual low pressure system that's going to be moving on through here. So that's exactly what's going to happen. And I mentioned this like a couple videos ago, or even last video. Last video is a long video, by the way. I apologize for it being so long. But a lot of scattered convection that'll probably happen prior to the risk here. That will occur on Friday, in which Friday is the massive slight risk here. This is severe weather outbreak number 1. All right, I can't exactly call this a tornado outbreak, although I will say a particular model in question is uptrending this severely. So I will have to continue to monitor this as soon as the more we get closer and closer to this event. But places like Oklahoma City, places like Wichita Falls, into Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, Houston, Shreveport, Alexandria, Jackson, Mississippi, you guys are not out of the risk. Texarkana, I am fully expecting you guys to be added into the risk here soon. I think that slight risk could be added. I also think an enhanced risk could be added in Texas, especially right along the border here of Texas and Oklahoma. I'm actually anticipating the slight risk to like get expanded like this, and then I'm fully anticipating, an enhanced risk right within. Let's see if I can get my marker out here. I'm fully anticipating an enhanced risk right within this area. Maybe not for Houston, but like right within here, and it'll like curl out to like Texarkana, because the conditions over there are looking really favorable for some severe weather. Large hail along the line, damaging wind gusts, the potential for some few tornadoes, actually quite a bit tornadoes that could form off of this according to that model, which I'm actually a bit concerned about now. Seems how this is just showing up. So we'll talk about it here in a second. But the probabilities here for the most part is that 15% chance indicated in yellow. You also have a hatched risk here. This is your significant severe risk, which for this is just the probability outlook. It should say day 3, but it's not. It says day 1. So day 3 up there. This should say, this should be right here. For the most part, I would fully anticipate this SIG to be expanded a bit further to the east. But for those who don't know what a SIG risk is, it's a 10% chance for significant severe weather or above. And because this is just a regular severe probability outlook with day 3 here, they don't do like the tornadoes, the hail, and the wind. They just do a general risk, if you will. So definitely something to keep in mind for the most part. This is a situation that could produce very large hail. I'm dead serious when I say this. Large hail. Baseballs may be larger. Baseballs are 2.75 inch size hail. So that's, if you can imagine baseballs falling from the sky, not a situation you want to be outside for, and it's something to where you're probably going to want to bring all of your essentials that are outside indoors. So cars, bring it into the garage. Pets, bring them inside. You do not want them to get hurt, because a doghouse will not protect them. Baseballs can go through that, and that is definitely something that you're going to want to really, just monitor as this moves along. All right, let's take a look at the timings here. We're going to start here at 1 a.m. On Friday, and this may seem pretty early to you all, but just want to get the general sense as to what's happening for the most part. So 1 a.m., 7 a.m., a lot of scattered convection that still lingers from the day prior. And then this is 1 p.m. in the afternoon. Some storms are now starting to form here across areas near Dallas, Fort Worth, all the way down into the Austin vicinity, even into parts of San Antonio. There is some storms that are really starting to kick off. That'll move on through. You can see places like Fort Smith all the way up towards the border, heading off towards the Texarkana vicinity, get some storms. There's also some storms that form out here into Louisiana. You guys can't see this all too well, so what I'm gonna do actually is I'm gonna move. I love this. Move this down. There we go. And then I'm going to hide that. Perfect. All is well in this. Good enough. All right, so cells really start to form across the board here, and you can see how, for the most part, you can see some of these other cells that are really starting to gain a lot of precipitation. This is the simulated radar for the most part. And so if you can imagine how whenever I do my live analysis, we have the radar and how it shows, the yellows that are like moderate parts of rain. The red is the heavy rain. The green is the light rain. So you can see for the most part here, cells really start to develop, and then that'll move off into Arkansas. And this is where your second band of storms come through. This is 7 p.m. here tonight, Friday night. And more storms start to form off into the general vicinity of Oklahoma. That'll form into this kind of band along this cold front. You'll see that in a bit along a dry line. And that'll move on through all the way into the latter stages of that evening. You can see that according to this model, this actually just forms as a regular, just giant supercell that moves on through into eastern parts of Oklahoma, into Arkansas. And then even later on that night, 1 a.m., this massive line of storms that start to move on through into places like Louisiana and Mississippi. So an overnight event is most likely possible with this, but I would not be surprised if this line gets elongated a bit further. Let me actually go back a scan here. And so you can even see, this is the former line that was right here. This is the former line that was pushing on through into Louisiana. And the band of thunderstorms really start to catch up to it. And so that's definitely something we're going to have to monitor moving on through. All right, here's the dew points. And it's pretty moist. It's really moist, muggy for the most part. Anything that is 60s and above, that's pretty moist. And so whenever you see these kind of yellows, that indicates some 60s, except for this area right here. This is in the upper 50s. So it has to be like pure yellow, if you know what I mean. But 60s into the 70s in some spots in this orange. Massive dry line right here. You can see the dry line because it's really moist on one side, really dry on the other. So we call the thing that separates the two a dry line because it's dry afterwards. It moves from west to east and it makes everything dry afterwards. So you can get some thunderstorms to develop on this. If there is any thunderstorms that develop on this, large amounts of hail, very large hail that could form off of this for the most part. This is at 7 o'clock in the evening when I took this. So it's, it's going to be ahead of some areas that are within the risk on the day 3 outlook from the Storm Prediction Center. But regardless, very moist here, here in the, in just the watch area. And it doesn't discriminate because areas in Arkansas and Louisiana, even Mississippi, starting to get into those 60s as well. Convective available potential energy, or CAPE. Your CAPE numbers, which just basically is the it's the displacement between the warm air rising, the cold air sinking. So the stronger the displacement, the higher the amount of CAPE there is. The more CAPE, stronger the thunderstorms typically are. So by using the North American model, or the NAM, we've been using the NAM the entire time, by the way, you can see that CAPE numbers actually get into these reds, which indicate 3,000, maybe even 3,500 joules per kilogram in some areas. The yellows are 2,000 joules per kilogram. The greens are the 1,000 joule per kilogram vicinity. So a lot of CAPE here, a lot of energy, a lot of buoyancy and unstable air mass in the atmosphere for these storms to really fire off. So just something to keep in mind too, with the amount of energy that's here in Oklahoma and Texas. We could have some strong supercells that could develop from this. Our low-level jet here, which is at 850 millibars, which is about 1 kilometer up in the sky. Very strong within this area. This is actually the reason why, some of the models have kind of uptrended. The GFS and Euro actually hinted in a low-level jet uptrend over the past couple of days, and I actually mentioned it earlier. I didn't really correlate it towards the tornado risk, but I just saw that advection would be a whole lot stronger and that more moisture would be seeping on through, and just forehead moment where I didn't attribute it towards tornadic weather and a potential uptrend for tornadoes. So here we are. The NAM actually says it itself, a massive low-level jet that moves on through here in Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana. Notice how these are coming from the south and west. So I'm going to draw an arrow here. I'm going to draw an arrow indicating as to where these winds are moving. Okay. I'm going to move it towards our 500 millibar wind shear, or our mid-level winds at 6 kilometers up in the sky. Notice how these winds are now coming from the almost due west. There are some areas that are moving just to the north and west. But notice this crossover right here. You can see how these winds move up from the north and almost north to the northeast, and then this moves more east-northeast. So this crossover from the low-level winds to the mid-level winds can get a lot of turning motion in the atmosphere. You can get a lot of veering with this type of setup. And so by looking at this with the 500 millibar wind shear, the 850 millibar wind shear, you can get some supercells that begin to develop. And you can see from the NAM, this is the supercell composite, which tells you not really the likelihood, but the chance for stronger supercells. So in the grays, it's not as strong. Blues, you start to get decently strong. Yellows are moderately strong. Reds and pinks are pretty strong. So you can see here at 7 p.m. Pretty strong for the most part across the board. Even later on into the evening, you start to get into the reds when it starts to get pretty strong, but those soundings that I've found were all pretty elevated. But for the most part, the wind shear was pretty good, and so the chance for tornadoes is there. This is the significant tornado parameter for any of you people who like to look at that. I call it the worst case scenario indicator. This is at 10 o'clock at the evening, so this is when it's at its worst around these times. This is the reds for the significant tornado parameter is kind of like moderately strong. Once you get into the purples and pinks, that's when you really need to start watching, but for the most part, it stays within the red to the dark red, so it's it's pretty decent for the most part. Let's take a look at some soundings here, because I know that's your favorite thing to look at. I know it's a amazing thing to look at. Let's dissect it slowly, all right? First things first, hodograph. You can see our hodograph has that veering. I was talking about the wind shear, and so the hodograph represents that. If you were to send a weather balloon up and it would go into that wind shear, you would track it with your radar. You can actually see the weather balloon's path as it ascends up into the atmosphere. So the 0 is 0 kilometers, which is at the surface. 1 kilometer, 2 kilometer, 3 kilometer, 4 kilometer, 5 kilometer, 6 kilometer, right here. So by looking at this, if a supercell roots, if it actually takes shape and starts to attribute to storm motion, you can get these right moving supercells that could be moving almost due east, a right mover, if you will. And it's just very. This is a very good hodograph for storm chasing. I'll say that much, because if you were to attribute to storm motion, you can see how it actually stays under the actual hodograph for the most part. And by looking at these parts of the hodograph in the upper levels of the atmosphere, if this were to cross over storm motion, you would typically get a lot of high precipitation based storms. But as of right now, even with your P watts in some areas at 1.5, even 1.7, it won't really matter all too much because the inflow notch will be relatively clear. So I would not be surprised if we saw some pretty big supercells that could sustain maybe a bit, but for the most part, very good veering here. So this indicates the chance for supercells and even tornadic structure to form here. Our CAPE numbers are 2,000 to 3,000. You typically want over 2,000 joules per kilogram, so you have a lot of energy here. No limiting factors. You typically want anything under negative 60 capping inversion. We have that, so this is something to really keep in mind there. Lapse rates are pretty good across the board, so nothing really to complain about that. Storm relative helicity surface to 1 kilometer is above 200. It actually gets up to 386, so that's pretty interesting. So this is in southeastern Oklahoma, northeastern Texas at 4 p.m. Very strong signature here from the sounding, and definitely something we need to keep in mind. I've got some other soundings here for this day. Central to eastern Texas, not as strong of a veering. Not a lot of wind shear here with this event as you head further south. But just because there's less wind shear doesn't mean that the characteristics of these storms could diminish, because typically when one area falters in severe weather, another area strengthens. And in this case, it is your energy. I mean, you still have good hodograph here, but your CAPE is now starting to climb. I mean, it's starting to get to the 3,600 joules per kilogram vicinity, and your lapse rates have actually increased, which indicate that some larger amounts of hail could fall. So places like Austin, San Antonio, your guys' general vicinity, you guys could potentially get a lot of larger amounts of hail. I also want to mention here too, I'm not sure if I mentioned this in the previous slide, but the LFC, LCL are pretty low. So the LCL, that's the low cloud level. So if you just think of it this way, if it's closer to the ground, then it has an easier chance for tornadoes to form. The LFC is the level of free convection, so your energy that starts to exhaust into the atmosphere. So really, if you have your energy closer to the ground, it feeds it typically contributes to a lot of stronger tornadoes, stuff like that. So yeah, the chance for tornadoes is here with the LCL as low as it is, the LFC as low as it is. The chance for some tornadoes to be strong within that area, southeastern Oklahoma, northeastern Texas, is possible. Same thing with central and eastern Texas. Lesser amounts of wind shear, I will say that much, so it probably won't be as strong, but the chances of tornadoes is there. Most likely we'll be live streaming this event. If this is probably going to go 5% chance for tornadoes. Actually, I would be surprised if it didn't, if it stayed as like a 2% chance for tornadoes. So if you guys were to turn on the notification bell for whenever I live stream or even upload videos, please do so, because I'm going to most likely be live streaming. So yeah. But LFC, LCL pretty low. As I said, energy is there. Your helicity is starting to falter a little bit. It's below 200, but not that big of a deal, because I've seen tornadoes form at weaker. It's just more of a preferred thing to where it'd be that high in order for it to actually get, for you to really consider tornadoes. But the sounding is pretty good as well. You still have your veering. You still have your energy. Your lapse rates are pretty good. It's still going to be a right-moving supercell, and it's going to be low precipitation type. So if there's any chasers out there, they're going to have a field day with this. I'm actually guaranteeing that we're going to see some good pictures on Twitter on Friday. So something to keep in mind with that. This is 7 p.m. in Central Daylight Time. Southeastern Oklahoma, northeastern Texas, southwestern Arkansas. Your veering is a whole lot better. I mean, look at this, guys. Let me tell you this real quickly. All right. You may not know it as a well-known fact, but I know it as a well-known fact. Low-level jets increase as the time gets later as it gets later on into the evening. All right, that's just wind shear increases. That's how it works. And so you're actually seeing that in front of you here with how much veering there is. Critical angle is very close to 90. So this is a very good hodograph here. I'll give it a double check, or a check plus, if you will. But this is a very, very concerning thing that I am seeing here on the model. Your helicity is really good, 311 at surface to 1. Surface to 3 actually is really good too at 500. So your shear isn't an issue. Lapse rates aren't an issue either. And your cape isn't an issue either. It's forecasted to be almost 3,000, but it's 2,000 at this point when I take this sounding, so it's not that big of a deal. LCL, LFC is pretty low. EL is pretty low too. That's one thing. So we might not have higher top supercells unless if they're really explosive, but there isn't a whole lot of capping inversion to create that explosiveness. So we may see some gradual cells that form within this event, but that's pretty interesting if supercells can get rooted. But for the most part, storm motion, if supercells don't get rooted, they'll be moving off to the north and east. You can see LM, or left moving. So that would be just if the cell were to typically, if it wasn't rooted for the most part, it would still stay true. But then when a supercell gets rooted, it starts to attribute to towards more or less the upper level parts of the atmosphere, and gets carried off to the right. So the more you know. I would play that sound bit, but I'm probably going to get copyrighted on YouTube. Anyways, Eastern Texas, your veering gets a whole lot better as well. So it's just, all I have to say for this is that people really need to monitor this event with the utmost respect. And even as you get into the overnight hours, it doesn't really change a whole lot. I will say near Austin and Central Texas, your veering is pretty interesting as well. It actually starts to move, if it were to be rooted, if you have a supercell, it actually moves southeast. So that's the reason why I say places like Houston, maybe even Corpus Christi, you guys would not be surprised if you guys got thunderstorms overnight. So one of those things where you need to turn on emergency notifications for your National Weather Service, or if you have a weather radio, please be sure to use it. Day 4 severe weather outlook. This is very upsetting to me because we are only halfway through my slide, and we've already went through 25 minutes of your time, so I gotta really speed this up. But places like Birmingham, Atlanta, Jackson, Mobile, New Orleans, Tallahassee, you guys really need to monitor this, as this could potentially give you some severe weather. I'm expecting places further towards Florida to get a higher risk for tornadoes, honestly. But can't rule out anything into places like South Carolina, honestly, because there's supposed to be. I'm actually anticipating severe weather in some of these areas as well here in the Carolinas. So just keep monitoring that as we get closer and closer. The one thing about this is that the NAM starts to actually run out. It goes only 84 hours out from its runtime, and so from when I started to upload this video, I only got the one that got issued in the middle of the night, and it's probably updating right now, and I'm too lazy to start this video over, so we might as well just keep trucking. It's probably going to be the same exact thing or same exact information anyway, so it won't be too big of a difference. But you can see as we head into this isn't 1 p.m. This is very upsetting. There we go. Okay, so this is that was in the morning. All right, just it says p.m., but it's supposed to be a.m. So just trust me on this. So 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. It'll start to push on through. You can start to see more storms are starting to form along into Mississippi and Alabama. That'll continue to move on through. And this is the 18Z hour, so 1 p.m. Central Daylight Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. You can see a line that starts to hint of potential severe weather to form within this general vicinity. You can also see some more severe weather here in Mississippi and Alabama. But I would fully anticipate this line right here to get some severe weather and potentially form some supercells along that. So anywhere from, I'll say Pensacola to Tallahassee, further north of that, south of Atlanta, over towards Florida, and the coastline towards Savannah and even South Carolina, you guys could potentially get some severe weather here. Transitioning from the NAM model, we're actually going to look at the Euro, because the Euro has better graphics than the GFS. So you can see massive low pressure here with this swirling band with its cold front to push off. And so that's the reason why there is the risk for severe weather there on Saturday. So you can see a line that actually forms and moves on through here into North Carolina and South Carolina. And then as that continues to move on through all the way out into the evening, this is 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. That'll continue to push off towards the coast. Dew points. I'm using the NAM and the Euro for this, but the NAM still shows a little bit of a dry line here. Not as steep as the day before, but dry line still prevalent. A lot of moisture here for the most part. 60s, almost into the 70s in some spots here once you get closer and closer to the coast. So the NAM says that there's going to be a plethora amount of energy. The Euro says that there's going to be a lot of energy. The Euro actually, I think, overdoes the amount of energy. Well, a little bit, but there might be some strong moisture return with this as well. So who knows? We'll have to see as this continues to move on through. But 70s for the most part across the board here within this general risk. Cape, this is the NAM at the at 18Z, which is 1 o'clock Central, 2 o'clock Eastern. You can see for the most part, the Cape numbers stay within the 2,000 to 3,000 joules per kilogram vicinity. So a lot of energy here. Euro says that it actually gets higher than that, and this is the reason why I'm saying it's kind of overdoing it a little bit. But I definitely could see 3,000, maybe even 3,500 joules per kilogram. But 4,000, no. I would I'd be shocked if it actually got that high, but I'm not saying that it won't. I'm just saying I'm finding it very hard to believe. Wind shear, low level jet. We keep talking about this thing. We're going to keep talking about it. The NAM is saying that it's going to be pretty strong, actually, and I agree with this. The NAM actually is going to be my main contributor to this, to most of my short range forecasts, and I actually agree with the intensity of the NAM. Some of these areas here in these browns actually show some really intense wind shear with the low level jet. It actually gets up to 50 to almost 70 knots of wind shear, which is pretty insane. But the area that I'm going to be looking for the most is this general vicinity right here into Florida and Alabama. Right within that general vicinity, I'm really concerned about because of the amount of moisture and the amount of wind shear. Even with the veering here, we'll go to the 500 millibar wind shear, and it still shows that it's pretty linear for the most part, which tells me that's going to be a bit more of a QLCS rather than discrete cells within the line. But if you can get any QLCS to form, then you can have some jutting of the winds and potentially get a quick embedded rotations within the line there. So definitely something we can be monitoring with that. The Euro is really aggressive, I will say, with this event. It's been aggressive with this event. And so the wind shear is actually stronger than what the NAM says. We'll go back to the NAM real quickly, and you can see how tame this is for the most part. 60s to 70s, and most of these areas. The Euro says that it actually gets up into the 70s to 80s in some spots, and I'm finding that really hard to believe as well myself. I tend to not listen to the Euro in regards to wind shear and more towards moisture, even though I did totally just say that it's not going to be as strong as it is, but still something to monitor with that. Photograph time! Photograph time! You guys know the drill. We look at this thing and we determine as to whether or not stuff will happen. So you can see photograph does curl off to the right at 0 to 1 kilometer. Then there's a VBV that occurs, so veer back veer. So you can see how it actually goes south and then it goes north again. That's kind of fine in my honest opinion. If you can get some surface-based cells that can form, then your rotation could develop and there won't really be a whole lot of issues from that. Probably won't sustain a whole while, but then again, it could change as we are relatively far away from this event still. So this is in western Florida, southern Alabama, southwestern Georgia, for any of you who are wondering where I took this sounding. Cape, strong. Lapse rates, pretty good. Dew points, 70s. Shear, pretty good. Helicity is pretty good. Your critical angle isn't all too good, so that's kind of the reason why, if it doesn't curl as much, then that's the reason why I say it probably won't last a whole while. But still something to keep in mind with that. LFC, LCL pretty low, so you still have that chance for tornadoes to form. So everything checks out with that sounding. Eastern Alabama, southwestern Georgia, a bit further north, shows better wind shear, a lot more veering, but you still have that VBV here from 1 to 3 kilometers. So you have something there, but for the most part, it isn't really going to be all too as strong as the day prior, but you still have the chance for some strong storms. Don't get me wrong. Cape, still pretty good. Limiting factor does not exist, and the lapse rates are decent for the most part. LFC, LCL, pretty good, and shear's pretty good. So, just with this entire event, it looks really good for the most part. Then as you start to get further and further along into the day, I really just wanted to show you the photographs as they progressed, because we already know it has energy. Starts to veer a lot more. The photographs start to enlarge a bit. And that's what starts to concern me as time moves along. So, severe weather outbreak number 1, just an overview. It took you 33 minutes to get to this point, but you know what? It was well worth it so far. Alright, so severe weather outbreak overview for number 1. Friday, pretty strong. It's going to happen in Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana. Large hail up to baseballs, actually larger than baseballs in some spots, so maybe up to 3 inches. Damaging winds, not really going to be that much of a threat. Chance for tornadoes is going to be there. Probably will be live streaming it, so stay tuned. Alright guys, rejoice, for we are now talking about the second outbreak, and it doesn't have as much stuff as this because we don't have as much information on it. But I can call this a severe weather outbreak that could be occurring because everyone is pretty much agreeing at this point, including the Storm Prediction Center. That is not the day 4 outlook, that is the day 7 outlook. It says it right here, day 7. That's not a black pen. This is day 7. 7. There we go. Now we're organized. Day 7 severe weather outlook, 15% issued for places like Wichita down to Dodge City, all the way to Woodward, into Oklahoma City, down to Wichita Falls, near Abilene, with the Dallas Fort Worth metro area near Waco. This is really concerning for the most part, and I would not be surprised if they added a 30. They actually mentioned in their little outlook, in the text that they had at the bottom, that they could add a 30% either today, well, tomorrow, or on Thursday. And, well, tomorrow is Thursday. Duh. So Thursday or Friday. Would not be surprised. Would not be surprised if they issued a 30. And yeah, I'm already calling it a severe weather outbreak, because just based off of what all the models have said, they're basically agreeing with each other that this is pretty concerning. So let's talk about it real quickly. Let's look at the Euro and track it out for you all. I do not have a time at the top. Notice how I do not have a time at the top. It's because I can't really track out the specific timings for you all this far out. It's with so much margin of error with this, you know, anything could change, even the entire event in itself. But I'm saying that it's probably going to be an outbreak. So severe weather outbreak number 2 will start on Tuesday, the 27th. This is the 27th of April for any of you who did not get when this is happening. This is actually the 10th anniversary of the outbreak, the super outbreak in 2011. So this is kind of one thing too, to where you know, for whatever reason these events happen. You know, we had 2 years ago in 2019, we had an anniversary of the Joplin tornado, like the 8th or 9th anniversary, and there was a tornado that happened right in Joplin. So it's, you know, pretty wacky to see how this is either coincidental or it could be a pattern. You know, who knows? Some of these areas could be not really too prone to tornadoes. They could get the exact same thing. It's a theory to, you know. I know I'm rambling, but I'll hurry it up. Storms begin to hint here. This is towards the afternoon hours. This is the evening. This is 7 o'clock in the evening. Discrete cells that are showing up on the Euro. That is concerning. That's the reason why I say it's concerning. Because whenever you have discrete cells that form on a long-range, low-resolution model, that's not good. In the history that I have covered weather, if I've ever seen discrete cells, the event afterwards was pretty good for the most part. You know, it may have had one of those cells that actually do something, but that confirms to me that something is most likely going to happen within that criteria. And so then as it continues to move on through, elongated line, you can still see those discrete cells. You know, I'm going to draw lines here for you all. This is a gap, 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 this is a gap. Still has discrete cells within this line, and that's the reason why I still say it's concerning, because it still shows it. It still shows it. You know, like, what am I supposed to say? It's just pretty... This is absolutely amazing to look at as to how these models are really showing it. And I'm not trying to fearmonger, because this is, you know, for me, I'm getting excited because, you know, the last time I saw this, you know, it was really informational for me to look at and to study off of. And so for me, you know, the reason why I get excited for severe weather, I don't know about you all, is I love to study it. I love to dissect it. I love to be able to try and figure out what happens. And, you know, with this is really exciting to me, because this is telling me already. You know, it's not as much of a challenge, but it's still telling me discrete cells. Could be a more or less a QLCS that starts to form later on into the evening, but discrete cells. You can see that in the wind shear if you take soundings, but I just elected not to show soundings because none of the models are really showing a whole lot for soundings. We know there's energy there. It's just how much? That's our question right now. Speaking of energy, our moisture here for the dew points is staying within the 60s. for the most part towards the afternoon. Into the evening, that's when things start to get pretty interesting, because it starts to get into the upper 60s, into the 70s in some spots. Massive dry line that shows up here. So you can have one wave that moves on through with your storms that'll push off, and then you could have a second potential wave that could form off towards the rear of it. And so that's something really interesting that we need to monitor. Wind shear, low level jet. I'm using the GFS because the Euro is, as I've said, been very aggressive on all of these events for the most part. So low level jet here, very strong for the most part, coming out from the south. And then it just kind of, diverts for the most part. So I could fully anticipate some severe weather right within this general vicinity right here. Right here, this is, right around 4 o'clock in the afternoon hours. I'm not naming, I'm not saying this is exactly when it's going to happen, but right within this general vicinity, 100% could see something. And then your 500 millibar wind shear, your mid-level winds, show some pretty strong wind shear for the most part as well. Your giant low pressure right here, which is pushing on through into New Mexico, and you have some very strong shear that is pushing off with this event. So if you can get any crossovers right within this general vicinity, Texas right now I'm looking at heavily, then there could potentially be pretty interesting for the most part. Potentially, as I said, a severe weather outbreak. So something to continue to monitor. As time moves along into the evening, you can see how strong the wind shear actually gets. And so if you think of it this way, if you still have that flow from the low-level jet that kicks off from the Gulf of Mexico, and you still have your wind shear that is pushing off to the north and east, those crossovers right in there, you could potentially see something still in Texas, maybe still in Oklahoma and Arkansas. So something to keep in mind with that. And another thing too is a sleeper event that could happen up here into Iowa, Illinois, into Wisconsin and Missouri. Sleeper event on Tuesday as well. So something to keep in mind with all that. Now we're going to take a look at Wednesday. Multi-day severe weather event, just like Friday and Saturday. I said there would be sleeper for Iowa, Missouri, and Illinois, and Wisconsin just now. That'll continue into Wednesday. Wednesday, you'll see another risk for that as well. So you can see the line continues to move on through, and I'll just speed run this. This is from the morning, and by the time this ends, it's to the evening. So just, envision it in your head. Speed run. Line moves on through. Look at this line. It still pushes off, and it still is strong. And now you can see as it gets to the evening, this is the end of the run here. Well, not the end of the run, per se. Strong line of storms. There's your lines again. So, very interesting to see here with this event. But potentially a very strong event to unfold here. Dew points, 60s and 70s. I'll actually go back in time a little bit to the past frame here. Strong, just very moist for the most part. I say Wisconsin and Illinois, those areas, sleeper. You can see 60s and low 60s up here, so would not be surprised if something kicked off from there, but everyone's going to be looking towards the Ozarks into the deep south, and, for good reason. Dew points are the 60s to 70s, so a lot of moisture is there within this event. Low-level jet, pretty strong. All right. We'll start drawing arrows for the most part as to what our low-level jet is at here. And now we're going to go over to our 500 millibar wind shear, and we're going to draw some crossovers now because that's fun. So, red arrow, here's some crossovers. Here's some crossovers right here. This is the reason why I say it could potentially be a sleeper up in Illinois and Wisconsin, and even in Iowa. You got some very good crossovers over here, very good crossovers down at the south. So two areas potentially some severe weather here within this event moving on forward. All right, now we're going to start to get into the latter end of the event, and you can see here, the line continues to push on through, and it could potentially impact areas like the Carolinas, even into the mid-Atlantic. Who knows? I might be able to chase this If it gets over to my area, who knows? We might, but that'll be something for a later date. So I know this was a very long video. I'm sorry again. I tried to make it as quick as possible, but there was just so much stuff to talk about. You guys know me. I go in depth. All right, I'm the type of guy that will make sure that you get your information and that you know exactly what's happening, and I show my work compared to other people. So if you guys enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave a like. Leaving a like actually gets this video out to more people, and it helps them understand as to what all could be happening. So if you leave a like on the video, it gets onto more people's recommended feeds, and we can spread the news of this event to more people. Subscribe if you're new. I do videos like this every single morning. I tend to separate it towards timings and then what happens. So if you guys, want to stick around for like the beginning part of the video and like leave at the middle part, that's fine. I highly recommend doing that anyways, because, towards the end of the video, that's when there could be, that's when it's towards like the later dates and uncertainty rises within the later dates. So, there's still a lot of uncertainty with this event, but we know that there's going to happen within Oklahoma and Texas for the most part. So something to speak about with that. I don't know. I'm stuttering my words. Probably should end the video. Follow me on social media. All the stuff will be in the link in the description down below. Join my Discord server. I talk a lot on my Discord server. And so if you want to join, feel free to do so. That's going to be it for me, guys. My name is Nate. I also go by Hockey Boy Nate. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.